So this morning we are talking about the Ten Commandments, and we're continuing that series. And today we're talking about idolatry, not having idols. And idolatry is quite similar to my previous topic of do not commit adultery. Now, on my phone I have a picture of my wife Jules. She is the girl that I fell in love with when I was about 20 years old. She's my bride. She is the love of my life. And that photograph on my phone is a reminder with my wedding ring that I am taken, that she is for me and I'm for her, and that we will be faithful to one another for all of our lives together. I'm reserved solely for her. But imagine if Julie picked up my phone one day and there was another person on the phone. Imagine there was another lady, another woman on the phone. And she'd be like, "What? Who is that person?" And I said, "Well, do you know when I feel a bit sad, when I feel a bit lonely, that's the person I go to. When I'm feeling a bit stressed or tired, or I want some pleasure, I want some excitement, I want to take a few risks, I want to feel better, I want to feel different, I want to get out of my mind, I want to take away the pain that I'm in, I want to numb myself. That's where I go." She would be right to say, "What are you doing?" We made promises to one another. We put rings on our finger. We made pledges in front of the church, in front of God, in front of all of our families and friends to say that we would be committed for all of our lives together. She will be rightly angry, upset. Our neighbours could probably be surprised to find all of our belongings out the front window and lying on the lawn below. They think, "What's happening at number 29? Something really big's going down because all of Ben's stuff seems to be being thrown out of the window." And you see, marriage mirrors our relationship with God. It's like a mirror on earth of our relationship with God. When we made that decision to follow Jesus, we made a decision, we made a covenant with him, we made a decision that we would follow him all the rest of our lives, that we would make him Lord of our lives, the main thing, the main person in our lives. We would turn away from the old ways, the things that we used to do, and start afresh. That God will be our first love. He will be the one we would desire more than anything else or anyone else. And the thing about the Ten Commandments is that God loves us so much. It says that God loves us to 1,000 generations. That's how great his love is. His desire for love is far greater than his desire for judgment. If we've got children or grandchildren, nieces or nephews, and they said, "Do you mind, Dad, if we just go and play on the M5 this morning? Would that be okay?" I just love the motorway, the cars, they go so fast. It's such a great thrill. "Would that be okay?" You're like, "No, let's not do that today. In fact, let's never do that. That's going to hurt you." And that's why God gives us the Ten Commandments, not because he wants to spoil our fun, but because he knows these things will hurt us, and therefore he wants us not to go near them. It says in Exodus 24-6, "You shall not make yourself an idol in the form of anything in heaven above, or earth beneath, or the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing children and the sin of their parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commands. So firstly, idols are made by somebody. Somebody would make an idol. They don't just happen. The Hebrew word for idol is pesel, which refers to something that's manufactured, carved, a divine an image that's set up to replace the divine, an attempt to manipulate or replicate a divine presence. And it comes from the Hebrew word porsal, which means to shape, because idols are made by somebody. Somebody will have made an idol. We don't generally make them out of stone or wood or metal now. We carve them and shape them in our minds, in our hearts, and in our desires, in our passions. Tim Keller says this in Counterfeit Gods: what is an idol? It is anything more important to you than God. Anything that absorbs your heart, your imagination, more than God. Anything you seek to give you what only God can give. An idol is something that you look at and you say, if I had that thing, it would make my life have meaning. It would make my life better. It would make my life secure. And the only way to describe that thing is that relationship with that thing is worship. We worship these things. But God, that wasn't the way it was supposed to be. We were in a perfect relationship with him. In Genesis 1:26, God says, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and the livestock, and all of the wild animals, over all of the creatures that move along the ground. You see, Adam and Eve, they were made in God's image. They were made in the image of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. That's whose image we are made in. And we're made in the image of his nature, a nature of holiness and goodness and joy and peace and patience, and a nature of community and a nature of diversity. And we are called to reflect who he is. We're called to reflect his light and his goodness out from us into the world. That was what we were called to do. This mirror, it's designed to reflect light. So when we look at something, and I've got to get the science right on this one, light passes through the cornea and the pupil and is focused by the lens onto the retina, and then via the optic nerve, an image is sent to the brain, which processes and flips and shapes the image. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? And Adam and Eve, they were made in God's image. They reflected all of his goodness and all of his light and all of his perfection. But they saw this tree. And this tree was the knowledge of good and evil. And they saw this fruit, and it was good for eating, and it was good for wisdom. And they thought to themselves, you know, if we took from that tree, we could be God. We could call the shots. We could do what we want to do, because we would have all of that knowledge that God has. And in that moment when they ate from the tree, sin came into the world. And what sin has done is this: it's turned the mirror from God, and it's turned it in on ourselves. And as soon as we become the focal point, they become the center point of the image becomes corrupted. And things like pride come in. Don't I look so handsome today? Or maybe comparison comes in. I'm not as good looking as Dan. I'm okay, but Dan, he's so good. And Tim, he's just, he's so well dressed, he's so smart and so sharp. We start to compare. Or maybe we look in the mirror and do you know what? I can't even look at myself. I hate what I see. I'm so ugly. I'm so horrible. Why would anyone want to know me? I'm so horrible. And we have self-hatred or selfishness. We just spend all day thinking about ourselves and what we can do and what's best for us. And instead of reflecting God's nature, we reflect our own nature, our own sin back. Because idols are not made out of wood and metal and stone. They're shaped by somebody, and generally they're shaped in our hearts and our minds. Idols are made by somebody. We make idols every day if we're not careful. So idols are made by somebody. Secondly, idols lead us away from God. And there's three areas I think that idols lead us away from God: gold, glory, and gratification. Gold, glory, gratification. King Solomon was one of the greatest kings of Israel. He was King David's son, and he came to the throne of Israel when he was ever so young. And one night God appears to him in a dream, and God says, "What would you like? I will give you anything that you want." And I guess Solomon, six years old or so, just a young boy, he thinks, and he thinks about his kingdom, and he thinks about all the people that he's overseeing. And he has a revelation. Do you know what I need is a wise and discerning heart. And God is so pleased with him. He's so pleased that he's chosen selflessness instead of selfishness. He says, "I'm going to give you everything that you ever wanted. I'm going to give you wealth greater than you could ever imagine. I'm going to give you all of the glory. You're going to be the most powerful, wonderful king. You're going to have more wisdom, and you're going to have more wealth and more glory than ever king that ever lived. You're going to be the greatest king." He had everything he could possibly want. But God said one thing: don't marry out of our people, because they're going to turn your heart. They're going to change you, because they worship other gods. It says in 1 Kings 11, 1-4. King Solomon, however, loved many foreign women besides Pharaoh's daughter: Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, Hittites. They were from nations about which the Lord had told the Israelites, "You must not intermarry with them, because they will surely turn your hearts after their gods." Key word now. Nevertheless, Solomon held fast to them in love. He had 700 wives of royal birth, 300 concubines, and his wives led him astray. As Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord, his God, as the heart of David, his father, had been. You know, he had all the right intentions, Solomon. He followed God with all of his heart, and he loved God. But he started to turn away from God, and he started to reflect the glory and the wealth that he had back on himself instead of on God. In 1 Kings 10 it says the Queen of Sheba came to see him. She'd heard of his wisdom and his fame, all of his glory. She came to test Solomon with some of the hardest questions that she could possibly think of. I'd love to know what those questions were. Do chicken dream? I don't know. How can you have camels walking across snow in Mongolia? I don't know. She came up with these amazing questions. But when she saw his wisdom, and when she saw his gold, she saw his palace, and she saw his cupbearers, and she saw his table, and she saw his food, and she saw all of his wealth, she was overwhelmed. Because he had gold, he had glory, gratification. It said in those days that silver was as common as stones. Imagine that. But what Solomon discovered is that if we take our focus off him and we turn our focus back on ourselves, that image is so corrupted. 700 wives. Richard's shaking his head. 300 concubines. There's a few people nodding around the room. That's 1,000 relationships, 1,000 people he was trying to and failing to keep happy. And God had already told them, don't do this. It's going to turn your hearts away from me. But they worship other gods. They're going to turn your heart to worship other gods. But nevertheless, Solomon didn't think like that. Doesn't apply to me, this. And the gold and the glory and the gratification turned his heart away from God. They became his God. And in 1 Kings 11:9 it says, the Lord became angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away from the Lord, who had appeared to him twice. God had himself appeared to Solomon twice, and he still turned away from him. He still turned away and did his own thing. For some of us, gratification is our God, whether it's sex. It's fine in the right context, but it's not designed for outside of a loving marriage. It could be pornography. It's so accessible these days on our phones, on our tablets, computers. It's a huge problem today. It could be substances, things that we take, things that we drink. But for every high there is a low. For every overindulgence in drink, there is a hangover. It could be comfort eating. It could be that we go to food when we're feeling stressed out or tired, or we're needing a pick me up, and we just know that the first thing we do is we just go and we just eat and eat and eat. For other people, it's praise. We long for people's affection. We long for people's praise, to big us up. And it's fine to be encouraged. We all need encouragement. We all need somebody to say, oh, you've done a great job. That's absolutely fine. But it's when it gets out of hand, in those moments where it becomes something that we're constantly searching for. I love what John Wimber said. He said, I'll take the encouragement, but I pass on the glory to him. It could be our social media. Social media, we can be living our best days on social media. We've got the perfect relationship, the perfect friendships. We've been to the best places. We're doing the best things. We're living the best life. And yet deep down, we know that our relationship's not right with our kids, or we know that we've not got the right relationship with our spouses, or we know there's an emptiness or a feeling of inadequacy deep down, which is just not being satisfied by these things. Could be people, whether it's TV celebrities, whether it's film stars, sports stars, movie stars, social media influencers. These people, we can make these people our gods, but when we make people our gods, they can reject us. They can cancel us. Our worlds can fall apart when they're not around. Maybe work or achievements. Work or achievements can be our God. We're just so driven by work. We're so driven by targets or achievements or things that we can do, building businesses, doing amazing things, but we can just be burnt out by these things. They can burn us out. Maybe it's gossip. Just love a little gossip. Did you know? Did you hear about so-and-so? Did you hear what they said? You'll never believe what I've just heard. And yet it degrades us. It fills us with pride. It undermines other people. We ourselves can be gods. The Bible says, do not make yourselves an idol. Don't make ourselves an idol. We can seek perfection. We can try and have the best complexion, the best hair, the best this, the best that. But God says, no, don't make yourselves an idol. Could be superstition. Do you know everything's going to be all right, touch wood? Like, why would you touch your head and say that? Maybe you don't like walking under a ladder. Maybe like Friday the 13th, you get the shakes, what's going to happen today. Maybe you get the 13th ticket and you're like, oh, I don't want that one. For some of us, it could be horoscopes. In Nazi Germany in 1941, Rudolf Hess made a decision based on the alignment of Uranus and Neptune, as advised by his astrologers, to go and broker a peace deal with Britain. Hess's plane crashed in Scotland during the journey. He was arrested and imprisoned because he was discovered in Britain without authorization. How did that work out for you, Rudolph? Not good. Because these things, they don't work. They're just a glass ceiling on our lives. They limit what God can do because we don't believe he can do it. But I believe that God can do immeasurably more than we can ask or imagine. Immeasurably more, not a bit more, not a little bit more, but he can do immeasurably more than we can ask or imagine. Idols thrive in the darkness of secrecy. They grow in that darkness when nobody else knows about them. But you know, the greatest thing you can do is expose these things to the light. Allow God's light in. Because somehow, as we let God's light in, tell somebody, confess it, they lose their power. They have no power, these things. They have limited power in many ways. But the only power is the power that we allow them to have. But the one who has all of the power is the one that we need to turn to. They don't give us what we need, gratification and glory and gold. They just leave us disappointed and ashamed. But Jesus says, I want to give you life, and life to the full. Jeremiah 10:14 in a contemporary English version bluntly puts it like this. Please don't be offended. People who make idols are so stupid. They will be disappointed because their false gods are not alive. Psalm 115:4-8 says, idols are silver and gold made by human hands. They have no mouths. They have mouths but they cannot speak. They have eyes but they cannot see. Ears but cannot hear. Noses but cannot smell. Hands but cannot feel. Feet but cannot walk. Nor can they utter the sound with their throats. Those who make them will be and put their trust in them will be like them. If you make them, you will be like them. They don't transform us, we become like them. They stop us seeing the truth. They stop us speaking the truth. They stop us hearing the truth. They stop us walking in the truth. They lead us not towards God, but away from God. They don't fulfill us, they empty us, we become like them. I love this quote from Jim Carrey. I wish everybody could get rich and famous and do everything they ever wanted, everything they ever dreamed, and realize it's not the answer. Just going to ask Ruth to come up and play now. But idols are made by somebody, and idols lead us away from God. And so how can we turn this situation around? We need to turn back to Jesus. We need to turn to the one who walked the earth because he had feet. We need to talk to the one who can see, the one who could smell, the one who could hear, the one who could touch, the one who faced every temptation. But unlike Adam and Eve, he overcame so that we can too. The one who was crucified and raised from the dead, Jesus, the true image of the invisible God, the one that we can know personally. Colossians 1:15, Jesus is the Son, the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. A few things just to think about this morning, really practical things to think about this morning. I'm not going to ask you to do these things, by the way, right now. But imagine let's think about gold. Imagine if you took out your banking app this morning and you just showed it to the person next to you. Would anyone be able to tell from your banking app what your values were? Would anyone who looked at your banking app know you were even a Christian? Would Jesus get the glory? Would he be glorified when you look at your banking app? Just a question. Glory. If someone listened to your conversation this week, if someone looked at your social media pages this week, who would get the glory? Would he get the glory? Would anyone even know you're a Christian? Would Jesus be glorified? And gratification, what brings us pleasure? There's nothing wrong with enjoying life, celebrating with friends. Sex is fine in a loving Christian marriage. Or in a marriage. God created it. It was his plan. It's okay to have a little food and enjoy a glass of wine. Jesus went to parties, he went to banquets, enjoyed a barbecue on the beach with friends. He'd go up to the mountains. He'd enjoy time on the lake. It's fine to enjoy the good things of life. But my question would be, when you're enjoying these things, would anyone see what your values are? Would anyone know you're a Christian? And would Jesus get the glory? There's sometimes times where we just need to come back to Jesus and say, Jesus, will you search me? Will you test my heart? I want to come back to you, and I want your light on my life, and the gold, the glory, and the gratification. Will you have the first place? Will you have the supreme place? When Jesus went to the cross, he had no gold. They'd even gambled away his clothes. He had no earthly glory. People were mocking him, spitting at him, shouting insults at him. He had no gratification. There was nails through his hands and his feet. He could hardly breathe. He was anointed with oil, with blood pouring down his body from the beating that he took. But on the third day, he rose from the dead to show that he defeated every single idol. There is no name above his name. He was given the highest place, the name above all names, the name that every knee will bow and every tongue confess that Jesus is Lord.
Hi, thank you for watching this content. I pray that it has inspired you and encouraged you to grow in your faith in Jesus Christ. Well, if you'd like to see more of this content, you can like and subscribe to this channel down below. Also, if you'd like to give a financial gift into this incredible vision and ministry, you can do that by going to www.onelifechurch.co.uk, click give right on the front page, and there you can give. So please give generously and cheerfully. So from me and all the One Life team, till next time, God bless.